You referred to the one option that you were not sort of placing on the table for Fort Wayne. I gathered a little bit that you thought there would probably be low tolerance for it, which was having design standards, the district model. Does that also, in some ways, Fort Wayne, as any city does, has requirements in planning and zoning, the number of spaces available. So they're already in that sort of aspect of parking and design standards in relation to new structures. But does that district model also get into regulation of privately owned parking lots?
No, not necessarily. It would basically focus on public. The things about the district model that I didn't think would sell well in Fort Wayne was that beyond the on-street and the enforcement and the off-street parking management, they have a variety of other funding sources, essentially a special parking assessment. And the idea of selling a parking tax, essentially, in downtown Fort Wayne, I just thought was, I don't think we really need it yet, and maybe never. But I just thought it would be so controversial. It's like bringing up the idea of a parking tax, which a lot of communities, especially in California and Philadelphia, are looking at. But mostly that tax is they're trying to discourage single occupant vehicle use, and by taxing parking and then using those funds to support transit and transportation alternative programs and investment in transit infrastructure. Again, you're just not there. You don't need that kind of investment in parking. So what I tried to come up with was sort of the most innocuous, most politically sellable, but really something that's going to get you on the right path of this best practice of consolidated parking program management. It's just a natural way of looking at it, and it's just interesting to me that it's just how it evolves in municipalities in particular, which is different. We do a lot of work in universities and medical centers and casinos and sports complexes and stuff like that, where it's basically a one-owner system. But in a municipality, where you've got lots of different owners, lots of different players, and usually a municipal program that's in place to try to put some downward pressure on parking rates to make downtown a little more competitive with the free parking in the suburbs. There really is no such thing as free parking. Somebody's paying for it somewhere, but it appears to be free. So how can we do the best job we can to make downtown as competitive as possible, given the realities that we have downtown? And this integrated management thing is just, where it's worked in other communities, it's one of those obvious best practices that just makes perfect sense. And where we've seen it implemented in other communities, it's made a huge difference. And so that's one of the reasons we recommended it back during our initial study. So.
Dennis, I have one last question. I have got to go, so I'm going to jump in ahead here. I'm interested in getting broader community input on these ideas, some of which seem to be very, very good. And there are ways that we can do that. What is your time frame on this? Do you have a month or 2 or 3 before you bring this forward, so you can go out and maybe have some presentations by the committee to various community groups to gauge a little better what the general public is thinking?
Well, I think where we are is that we've essentially are wrapping up our recommendations in terms of these options. I think the steering committee has put forward the items on which they've developed some level of consensus on, which that will then be handed to the mayor and city staff for a selection of a recommended concept. Greg, do you want to?
Yeah, just after the fine work of the committee, the volunteers, first of all, I want to thank all the people that volunteered to serve on the task force. I really appreciate it, and all the hours that you put into it, Dennis. Their work is done, and they provide us with the recommendations that you saw this morning that will be forwarded to the mayor. And we're not under any time pressure to deal with this. We'll deal with it as necessary. I think one of the first steps we're going to do is get it on our city website so people can view it, get comments through the website. In other ways, we want to get that involvement that you talked about. And we'll take the time that we need to take to understand what it is that we're trying to do. Clearly, the only deadline that was put forward here is the deadline of February for some specific program approach to Harrison Square. The starburst dispersal, the signage, that has to take place, whether there's an agreement to go forward on an authority commission or not. So that's going to happen. But the move towards a reorganization of how we manage parking downtown will take the time it needs to take.